Hey guys, welcome to my studio. In each video, my goal is to help you become your own version of an accomplished artist. Today we're going to draw a snowman, and we're going to focus on starting with big basic shapes and adding value and detail to it, giving it that three-dimensional look. So to start with, we're going to draw this picture here. And we're going to start with the very basic big shapes. And so we're going to start with circles. So I'm going to draw a little darker than I would normally draw, just so you can see it. So you can draw lightly until you get all your shapes right. So we're going to draw a circle, and you can see how I'm going back and forth. I'm just trying to get my circle about the shape I want it, and I'm not worried about definite line. I'm not going to press hard and just kind of do one line. I'm just kind of sketching nice and loose, and I'm just going to get that shape in. I'm not worrying about any of the extra lines there. And then I'm going to draw another circle, and this circle is going to be just a little bit bigger, and it's overlapping this first circle. So you can see how I'm just sketching back and forth, and then we're going to do it one more time. And this one's a little bit smaller, but not tiny. So I'm just trying to gauge about how big I want it to be. Okay, so now I have the basic three shapes. Now what we want to do is we're going to change those shapes into an object. So we want to make a snowman out of this. So we are going to erase any lines that we don't need. So I'll just erase that overlapping circle right there. Now that we have the basic shapes here and we've gotten rid of a couple lines that might add some confusion, we're going to start with the smaller shapes, and we're going to build it up. So I'm going to add the band, and I'm just looking at the angle that the band is, and I'm going to overlap it because it's going around that top circle here. So I want to overlap it. And then I'm basically just going to do a half circle here. Then between these two, it's just another cylinder or another band that will blend those two together. And the scarf is just a curved cylinder. So we're just going to sketch those in, get the other end of the scarf in, and then that's the edge of the scarf that's wrapped around. All right. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start drawing and adding even smaller details and shapes and try to get everything in, and then we'll tweak it and adjust it and make any changes that we need to. This is a snowman, and it's your snowman, so it can look a little different than mine. I'm doing kind of a star shape or some angles on my eyeballs because I want it to look like that rock was put inside the snow. So you can also do just little circles as well, like this. So we're just gonna go ahead and get the basic shapes in here. So these are bigger, so I'm just kind of make it look like it just got pushed into the snow, so you see just parts of the rock. And it's always good to do an odd amount, so we're going to do 5 buttons on the snowman instead of 4. So we'll have 3 on 1. And here we've got to blend these two big shapes together, so we're going to just imagine that snow and how it starts melting on top. And it's kind of similar to when you look at 2 scoops of ice cream on an ice cream cone. It kind of goes over and kind of hangs over the top. So imagine ice cream cone will even help you as well. And we're just going to kind of let the snow kind of hang over the top of that. And then when we get to the bottom, we want to give it a little bit of a ground. So we're going to put the ground behind here, and then we're going to have it kind of go in front just to give it some interest and make it look like it's sitting in the snow. So now we have the basic shapes. I'll erase the lines, and I'll put in just a circle right here for the pom-pom. Now I'm going to just go ahead and start adding a little bit of value and some detail, and I'm going to get my arms in as well. So let's get those in. You can make them have a variety of different branches or whatever you want to do. I'm just going to make them about that long, and this one's coming behind the scarf, so you kind of imagine that it's probably about right here. I don't need to draw this part, I just need to draw once I get past the scarf. And then another thing to remember is it's a branch. It's not like a stiff, straight piece of wood, so it's going to have some ins and outs. So, feel free to give it some personality. Make it look like a bulky twig. So instead of it straight, I'm going to give it a little bit of personality on that side as well. Okay, so this is where I'm going to stop worrying about my drawing as much, and I'm going to start adding value. And I'm also going to remember that anything I need to do, I can adjust whatever I need to whenever when I'm drawing, and nothing that I've drawn has to stay exactly the way it is. It can always be adjusted. It's not permanent just because it's drawn now and we're to this point. But now what I want to do is I'm just going to start building it up and getting some value and some depth. I'm working with an HB pencil right now. If you have drawing pencils, it's a great tool to have a variety of different softnesses of pencil, and an HB pencil is right in the middle. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a shadow side. So I'm holding my pencil from the far end and I am shading the edge here, just on the shadow side. And my stroke is going to be curved with the outside edge of the snowball here. And then as I go in, I'm going to do a scumble stroke, which is little tiny circles that are overlapping. If I want to get a soft feel, that's what I will do. Or I can also just go back and forth and just do the standard back and forth stroke as well. But by going straight back and forth, it kind of flattens things out. So I will sometimes go back and forth, and then I'll just go right over the top and soften it out with a scumble stroke. And I want my shadow to kind of fade away. I don't want there to be a real hard edge. And you might put it on and think it's really dark because everything around it is still really white. But once you get value all over, you might have to pump it up and add a little bit more darkness to it. I'm going to go ahead and work my way down. I can see that this scarf, I made it go quite high there, so I'm going to pull it down just a little bit, give it a little crease in there. And this corner right here, because of the scarf, it's going to be a little darker, so I'm going to pop in a dark value there. I'm going to put a dark value here for the scarf, since that would be shading it right there. And then I'll hold my pencil further back and I'm going to go ahead and add a dark side on the snowball, the second snowball and the third snowball. Feel free to turn your paper however you need to as well to get the angle you need. I turn my paper quite a bit when I'm drawing, especially when I'm shading. So you can already see some depth and dimension coming into play just by the shading that we did on that left side here. So, all right. Just because this is a shadow side doesn't mean there's not some shading on the other side. And when you want something to look three-dimensional, by adding a little bit of value on the edge and letting it get lighter as it goes towards the center, it will give it that look. A slightly darker edge will send the shape back around the outside and bring the center forward, which gives it that three-dimensional feel. So we're going to just add a little bit here, just so that instead of it being a line right here, we're going to put an edge on it. So it's a sharp edge on this side, and this side on the left is a soft edge, so it just fades away. And you can always think of what's shading another area, so make sure you put little punches of darkness in where you see that. Even though it is the light side, you're going to have a little bit of shading. So I can still tell that my side here is the shadow side. I'm just turning the form by doing a little bit of shading on this side. And you can see all my little sketch marks basically are just kind of got filled in by the shading. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add a little bit of dimension to the hat. And to do this, I want to imagine the knit cap. And it's not going to be a straight down because it actually is, it's a fabric or a knit, and it actually has some movement in it where you've pulled it over the head. So what I'm going to do first, before I put the design in, is I'm going to put some shading in. And this will tell me how the design will be affected by the shading. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading on this outside edge. And I'm going to just imagine what the fabric is doing, that it's kind of going in and out. I'm going to shade it accordingly, just so you can get that feel of it going in and out. On this side, I'm also going to shade it, but very lightly, like I did down on the snowman. Just a little bit of shading, with a little bit of movement for where the knit cap is going in and out. And then I'm going to go up to the cap area, the top part of the cap, and I'm going to get some shading in here. I'm actually going to hold my pencil a little closer and get a pop of darkness right there between this part of the hat and this part of the hat. And I'm going to build that up. I'm going to build this up a little bit darker as well. And then here, this is not stiff either, so this has some movement in it as well. So I'm going to just add a little bit of shading where that movement might be going in and out on the fabric. And I'm going to go right up to the top. And I'm going to put a little bit here. And I'm turning my paper just a little bit so I can get that curve stroke easier. Okay, now we've kind of thought about the fabric and what it's doing. Now what I want to do is I want to add some stripes to it. So I'm going to start with this cuff part, and wherever it gets dark, my curve is going to change. So if I go rounded here, when I get that dark part, it's going to go in, then it's going to go rounded, then it's going to go in, and then it's rounded again. So my stripe actually changes direction as it hits the dark areas. So I'm going to basically give me some guidelines before I go any further. It looks like I need one more right there. And I'm going to, as they dissipate and you don't see as much, then you're not going to have as many ins and outs. So you can see this is a bigger arched area, and then it goes in and then out. So it's going to have a little bit of a movement just because it's knit. So you can see I'm just imagining that knit cap and creating a movement to it. And then when it gets to the bottom, instead of going straight, now I'm going to start curving it just so it looks like it's coming up and it has some depth there as well. So I'm just continuing my lines to give it some movement there. And then as those shading disappears, then my curves will start to straighten out. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and do, on this top part, I'm going to actually just do a back and forth stroke, and I'm going to go towards this center area. I'm just going to get lighter and lighter as it goes across and angle it towards that circle. I just kind of want it to give it that knitted cap feel. So that's how I'm going to attain that. Darker when I get on this side, kind of fades away. Lighter when I get to this side. All right, so this area, I've got my little guidelines in here, so I'm basically going to do the same idea, and I'm filling in every other section between those lines just to give it a more bold stripe look. But I want it to look knit, so that's why I'm doing these little rows just to kind of give it that feeling of texture there. We do have a line right here, so I'm going to just fade it up a little bit so it's an edge, but it's not a stark line. And then for the pom-pom, I'm going to go ahead and lighten my circle so I can barely see it. And I'm just going to do kind of a flicking of the wrist like this, and so you get little tapered lines. And I like to turn my pencil so that the sharpness stays sharp longer, and I don't have to grab a pencil sharpener just to do a few strokes. So I kind of have a textured look there, and I'm going to hold my pencil from the end again and give it some shadow on this side just to be consistent with everything else we've done so far. Okay, so now we've got the hat done. Let's go ahead and do the same thing with the scarf. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little shading on it here. And I'm going to put more shading underneath here because that's going to be a shadow created from that scarf folding over there. And then I want to kind of curve this area where the scarf would be kind of folded in a little bit. And I've got a few extra lines right here. I'm going to go ahead and erase those, get them out of the way. Now this time, if we want to do a stripe on this one, what we have to do is we're going to go this way. So before I get my stripe in, I'm going to kind of imagine what the fabric is doing and create a little slight crease where the fabric might be going in on that, and hold my pencil further back and just create a little bit of a shadow, just so it's not all the same. And just because we have two ends of the scarf here, I'm going to make this one be in front of that one. So I'm going to put a little dark value on that one. All right, so let's go ahead and put the stripes here. And this time I'm going to just do small little stripes. And so it's a little bit different than the hat. So I'm giving it a little bit of movement, but once I hit this value right here, I'm going to make it change. So I'm curving it at the top, hit the value, and I'm putting a little curve going the opposite direction where that value changes, just to create movement. Okay, now that I get here, I've got two values, so I'm going to just go to this point, curve, this point, curve, and then back down. So you can see it has a lot more movement where the value has changed because of the fabric. Okay, now for the stripes on this side, I am going to, first of all, I'm going to pop in a little bit of value right here, so you can see the difference between the scarf and the head there. And then my stripes are going to go this way, so I'm going to curve it slightly, hit that dark value, I go the opposite direction, and then curve it again. So I'm going to go ahead and put these lines in, working this way. And by putting lines or texture in the fabric, it helps it look like it's got that movement as well. And you can see I turn my pencil every once in a while when I'm drawing. I just lift it up and twirl it a little bit just to keep my lead sharper. Now that that value is gone, now this is going to be more of a curve going only one direction for a couple points. And then when I see the next value, it's going to have that little dip again. All right, so let's go ahead and erase this outside edge that we don't need any longer. And we're going to add a little bit of value to the ground here. This is the shadow side, so I'm going to make this much darker. You see I'm just doing a back and forth stroke at this point because it's ground and it's not as rounded. And I'm going to give it a nice dark punch right here just because the snow is mounted up right there. And then I'll fade it away. And as I fade it away, I'm going to just do little scumble strokes on top of that back and forth stroke just to soften it a little bit. So I want to remember that it's actually white snow, so the white of the paper can certainly show through. Everything doesn't have to be colored. Just want to give it a little value change. So this side where the light is, I'm actually just going to give it a tiny bit of value change and kind of create maybe a little bit of the snow mounting in small little areas there. All right, so we've been using the HB pencil all this time. I'm going to go ahead and put my HB pencil down, and I'm going to grab a, I think this is a 3B pencil. And a 3B pencil is a softer pencil, so you can get a deeper value and you don't have to press as hard. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and work from the top down. And the reason I like to save my B pencil drawing till the very end, or the darkest values, is because it smears easily and I don't like to rub my hand into it and smear my picture. So I'm going to work from the top down just to keep that from happening. And as I do the eye, what I want to do is I want to create a little bit of a reflected light. So I'm going to put a little shape in there. This is just a little square, and so that you can see a reflection there. And I'm making it look like the eyeball is peeking out from under the brim of the hat. So that's why you only see part of the eye there. Now I pressed kind of hard to get that value in, not real hard, but I'm going to go even lighter and I'm going to get this carrot in. So what I want to do is I want to shade it, get rid of this line that I don't need anymore, and I want to shade it so it looks like it's darker on this bottom edge. So I'm going to start this direction, and I'm holding my pencil further back so I have a lighter touch, And I'm just going to put a little bit of a darker value under the edge of that. And as I go up, it's going to get lighter and lighter. And then I'll leave a little white band as well. And now, just so I don't have a line here, I'm going to create an edge, which is, it's faded away slightly. So I'm going to hold it from a distance. And I'm just going to create a nice light edge there. Okay, so I've got these little circles. I'm going to build them up, make them kind of odd shapes, and I'm going to make them a bit bigger and press harder and get that darker value in there to get the mouth in there, create a more interesting smile on him. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to the branches here, and I don't want the branches to be as dark as the kohl of the eyes and mouth, but I want them to be darker than the carrots. So I'm just going to not press as hard, and I'm going to give it a little bit of value change. I'm going to have it darker at the bottom and a little bit lighter as it goes up. I'm just doing a nice loose sketch, not worrying about it having to be really refined. It's kind of a textured wood, so go ahead and do both sides of this one. So adding that dark underneath will give it some dimension and make it much more interesting, and keeping it all the same value. Okay, let's go ahead and get the buttons in. I want to put a reflection in the buttons as well. I'm going to go ahead and just draw in a little curved teardrop on each button so I don't forget the reflection. Then I'm going to press harder, and I'm going to fill in the buttons. Okay, now that I've got the buttons in and I've got all the values in everything, what I need to do now is just look and see if there's any final touches that I need to make. And I can see this looks quite flat between the eyes and the nose. I'm going to go ahead and build my eye up just a little bit because I want it to be brought a little closer to the nose. So I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, which I think will add some interest. And I'm not worried about if it has a lot of little edges to it because it's a rock being pushed in the snow. I'm going to do the same thing with the other eye. And I think just by making it a little bit bigger, it brought that closer together. I'm also going to grab my HB pencil again, and I'm going to add a little bit of value on the snow right around its nose because I want it to look like it's attached to that area and not just sitting on top. And then I'm also going to put a shadow in. So the carrot's casting a shadow as well. So I'm just going to do back and forth, and I'm going to create a light shadow right on the snow below his nose. And then I'm going to grab my B pencil, and I'm going to put a few little punches of dark in there just to add interest and intrigue underneath the hat. I'll put a little bit of value there. You just I like to squint at it and kind of look and see what is it that I need to add. What is it that it's needing? Looks like here is kind of missing a little bit, so I'll build that up. Put a little punch of darkness to show that got some shadows there. And there you have it. That's a snowman, and we started with the very basic shapes. Then we went to the smaller shapes. Then we started adding value, looking at the light side and the shadow side, and creating depth by adding value to our snow on one side. We could tell where the light is hitting it. We also added reflections when we put in the dark areas, and then we added detail and texture in the hat and the scarf. If you got any value out of this video, please like, subscribe, or comment below. If you have any suggestions at all, we'd love to hear from you as well. And if you'd like to learn more about drawing, how to start with basic shapes, how to get shading to make it look three-dimensional, and how to add detail, check out my Pro Drawing Secrets course. The link is below. Thanks. See you next time.